Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a Storyteller Talks, my infrequent and random series of me blabbering about things that I think are relevant and important to how to run a game. It hasn't been that long since my last one, but, well, here I am again. This time I'm going to talk about a very specific problem that I've experienced many times as a GM. I'm pretty sure most of you out there have tried something similar. If you have ever run a game, or even in your fellow players, or you may be guilty of this yourselves, boo, shame, shade. Anyway, the issue at hand is that of introverted / extroverted characters, or on the other, whether you are a proactive or reactive player. And as per usual, I have no idea for how long this is going to go on with me rambling on, but anyway, this is a serious problem in many role-playing games, in my opinion, because we all know not all players are created equal. I'm not saying that there is such a thing as, role players who are better than others. I'm not like that, but we have different styles. As players, or as storytellers for that matter, we have very distinct and different styles. And some people are out front and super active, and they take up a lot of space in the campaign, and they seem like they're always the people who are, well, for lack of a better word, on. These kinds of players will often end up in sort of a leadership position in whatever group they're in. I'm one of those players, and I'm not saying that is necessarily a good thing. In fact, I think, at least at times, it can be a bad thing. The reason for this is that, believe it or not, real life, I'm an introvert, but I'm an introvert who, just to give you an example, when our esteemed and glorious host in this on this channel of CharismaToAC originally began, obviously that would be Daniel, when he originally pitched the idea for this thing to the rest of us, I was one of the people who had to be dragged into it on a, basically the others attached heavy chains to me and pulled me into this with considerable force. I'm not particularly comfortable with my voice and ramblings being out there on the interwebs in the way that it is. I probably never will be, but there you have it. I'm also one of those weird people who are extroverted introverts. I do what I do. I rant and rave and talk and fill out space and so on, mostly as a defensive thing. I do so because I think that the more I talk, the less other people have time to learn of all my faults. So there, a bit of personal information for all of you. And because of that, even in role-playing situations, I tend to be very talkative. I'm sure those of you who have listened to the recordings where I'm a player will know this by now, that I tend to talk quite a lot. And of course, when I talk, other people usually don't, which means that every minute of game time I take up is a minute of game time that others don't. There are good sides and bad sides to this. I am, if we use the metric from before, whether I'm an extrovert or introvert in terms of characters, and whether I'm an active, proactive or reactive player, I'm definitely an extroverted character. All of my characters pretty much are like that, and I'm also proactive sort of player. What I mean by this is that extroverted characters are the ones who will actively seek out NPCs, will actively seek out their fellow PCs. They will talk to them. They will, try to get information. They will try to set the agenda of whatever campaign you're in. in doing so. And that means that you take pressure off the storyteller. When you do that, you take pressure off the storyteller, because they don't have to exclusively be the people who create the campaign. As I've often said in these videos, role-playing is a collaborative effort. I keep harping on that because it is my core fundamental belief in when it comes to role-playing. Disagree or agree if you must, but that's how I see it. The point being that if it's a collaborative effort, you can't expect your GM to do the entire thing. They can't be the people who always, every single scene, lay it out for the rest of you, and you just act upon the information that you are given. You can also create scenes of your own in which you make the storyteller reactive, because you are the one who's setting the mood of the scene, and so on and so forth. The alternative is, of course, the introverted character, and they are, for reasons I don't think I'll ever probably fully understand, these are super popular. They come in a variety of flavors. Obviously, they're probably as many as there are characters out there, but there are some archetypes. The strong, silent, imposing, somewhat intimidating type, or the creepy, dangerous seeming, also usually intimidating character, or just the character who may give off an air of helplessness, or don't look at me, and I'm not the great big hero, and so on and so forth. The latter can from time to time also be an extroverted character, but that's a different story. People often, particularly in relatively inexperienced players, can be quite popular, because there's something cool. There's something cool about this 6'8", muscle-bound, armored colossus, just standing there staring at the evil NPC with a menacing air to them, and it never works. It doesn't work, because you, by making such a character, not only expect the GM to constantly remember that, oh, this character is so scary, but you cut yourself out from RP. People don't talk to characters like that. Unless you are comfortable playing a character whose entire contribution to the campaign is, being menacing and quiet and silent and stoic. Rawr. Unless that is enough for you, that kind of character just falls flat. You don't get to really take part, because taking part means going out of that comfort zone and being active, being someone who will initiate conversation, or deal with fellow players or NPCs in other ways except standing there and being stoic and silent and menacing. And the same thing goes for the slight variety on that issue, where you play the big strong barbarian type who basically answers every time they're being addressed by someone. They're monosyllabic. Yes, no, grunt, grr, that sort of thing is. For a GM, it is incredibly frustrating to come up against characters like that. It really is, take my word for it. It is massively frustrating, because you sit there and you set up a scene, and you would like for some kind of active interaction with the other, with your players, and that player just stands there and goes, "Grr, look at me, how scary I am, grr." And that kind of kills the interaction right there, because in real life, you know what happens? People avoid characters like that. If you see someone who stands there 6'8", again, as I said, muscle bound, looking frightening, do you walk up to that person and start talking to them? Do you try to befriend them? Do you try to, do you want to go up to such a person and go, "Hi there, would you like a drink?" Because it's human nature to then say, yeah, maybe he looks sort of cool, but most of all he just looks scary, and I really, really want to keep my teeth. And therefore, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. People don't go up to others like that. And after a while, it tends to feel, for the player, it tends to feel like, why am I not really a part of this? I'm bored. Engage with me. And then the GM may say, yeah, sure. This NPC comes up to you. How do you react? I stand there looking 6'8" and muscle bound and armored and menacing. And the NPC will be like, yeah, but what do you actually do? He tries to talk to you. What does he say? Well, he says, I have this. I have a problem. Could you maybe help me? Yes. Okay. Well, my family's farm has been plundered, and bandits have carried off my wife and two of my goats, and I'd really like to get my goats back. And I don't have much money, but I'll pay you. Okay. And the guy says, well, it's all about I know that the bandits, they had an orc leader, and I think, they went off in that direction towards, there are some cliffs over there. They, I don't know, maybe they have a camp there or something. Okay. What's the interaction? What is the interaction in that? One of the other characters come up to Gruff McMusclebound and go, hi there, Gruff, do you need anything from the stores in town? I'm heading in there. I need more arrows for my longbow. I'm heading in there. Do you need something? No. All right, that was it. Elf McBowman goes off and buys the arrows he needs, and Gruff McMusclebound stays behind and does fuck all. It doesn't work. Again, it just doesn't work. The creepy and menacing type is even worse, because that person, generally speaking, really gets left alone. And you may think that your character is super cool, but your character is also incredibly boring to interact with. And then, as I mentioned, there's the last of these archetypes where you play someone who's kind of coming across as sort of helpless. And yeah, sure, there might be somebody out there, some NPC, knight in shining armor, who's like, oh yay, there's a damsel in distress, and I'm going to protect the damsel in distress. And then that kind of character is typically played by a player who just doesn't say much. As a storyteller, it is our, yours and mine responsibility to try to engage every single player in the campaign. Try to get them to, have fun, get them engaged, get them active. And if you're dealing with a player who doesn't like to be center stage, that can be very difficult, because how do you put someone so far outside of their comfort zone? And you may do what I've done in the past and simply, I won't say ignore players like that, but after a while you kind of have no choice but to treat them like an NPC who just takes part in the fighting under the control of one of the players, because you just can't drag it out of them. And the danger of that really arises when you have a group of players where the majority are like that, where the majority of players won't suddenly say, you know what, we're having a quiet day, not much is happening, I'd like to spend that going out there and finding, there may be some orphans in the nearby streets that I can help, and maybe they have some problems with some bullies or whatever. I'm going to go out there and patrol the streets and see if I can find something. Or they may simply say, you know what, I walk up to I walk up to the barkeep in the local inn and start talking to him. My wife doesn't understand me, and my horse won't bunk me anymore. And start a in that case, very strange conversation with the barkeep. But at least that is a proactive sort of behavior. You are engaging the GM. You're helping set a scene, a tone. You're helping create some kind of background and further your own and the GM's understanding of your character, which is conducive to role playing, as in ROLL playing instead of, or sorry, ROLE playing instead of ROLL playing. Rolling dice is only a part of role playing. At least I know that there are people out there who think that it is the bee's knees and the end all and be all, and if you don't roll dice, you don't you're not role playing, and you know what, feel free to do that. I can say I'd never enjoy playing in a group and in a game that was run that way, because to me it's about the acting, basically. It's about getting behind the character's eyes and being that person for a few hours at a time. So that's the downside to the passive or introverted sort of character. But again, as I said, there are problems with the opposite as well. There are problems as assigned to being the extroverted character, because very, very quickly you end up taking up all the space. You are the centerpiece of the characters and the story, and everyone reacts to you basically all the time, and other players can very, very quickly feel like they're being reduced to NPC status. It'll be Bard McLovely, who is, it'll be the Bard McLovely stories, and everybody else is just his merry sidekicks, and that's not cool either. It's something that I end up squirming when I feel that way as a player, because oh dear, I've been kind of killing it for everyone again, and okay, what do I do to avoid that? And I don't always have the answer. I really don't. It becomes a bigger problem still if you are one or two players in such a group and everybody else sits there and is mostly quiet, and you have to, as I said, drag it out of them. Sorry. The problem lies in character creation. Our player in this group, Rasmus, who plays Tim in the Hereticus campaign, and White Sparrow on the Masks campaign, and Frothy in the A Long Voyage campaign. All of these are running at this time and are recorded. Rasmus has, in my opinion, a very good system for this, which helps him be a good middle ground, because he is very good at he can be active, he can be outward, he can be extroverted, but when one of the other characters actually then peeps up and says, I have an idea, he's really good at listening to it and engaging them and getting them involved in that situation. And he's also good at not always being center stage. I wish I could figure that one out personally. But his method is, when he sits down to create his character, he finds what he calls the character's primary and secondary motivations. Basically, what is this character about? What does this character want from life? That can be something as relatively simple as being, I want to be the biggest and strongest barbarian in the world, and everybody must fear me. That's a primary motivation right there. It's perhaps not the most creative one, but it's still a primary motivation. So whenever, if it was Rasmus playing this character, which is highly unlikely, seeing as he's not really into martial characters as such, but let's just say that he is the he has made this beast of a barbarian, and he goes out there to be, the biggest and strongest and scariest barbarian in the whole world. He has to actively work towards that. He's not going to become the biggest and scariest barbarian in the whole world by sitting there and waiting for others to realize that that is what he is. So he has to work on it. He has to be the one who goes out there and says, all right, everybody, look at how big and scary I am, and here's the proof, because I've just beaten up an entire tribe of horrible marauding orcs all on my own. And here's the head of their chieftain, and everybody's going to stand there and go, oh, wow, you're the second coming of Conan. And he's going to be, who's Conan? Wrong system. You get it. I hope. You get it. The reactive character in such a situation is going to sit in the inn and look scary and menacing, and then, 3 people are going to say, oh, wow, look at that scary and menacing person over there. And then 3 more are going to say, he looks that way, but what proof do we have? Has he actually backed up that frightening exterior in some way or other? It doesn't work that way. This is a sort of a, call it a advice for players out there. Never, ever, 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 ever fall into the trap of saying, oh, it would be so cool to be this big, strong, silent, stoic type. You're never going to be involved in the game. It doesn't function. Again, I've mentioned it several times now. The problem of the mixed group is that everything in the end hinges on the storyteller's interaction with 2 or 3 players, and at most maybe even 1 player, and how much group dynamic, again, how much collaborative effort is there when the GM sits there with a group of 4, 5, 6 players, and 1 or 2 of them are constantly the ones he has to go to get some kind of reaction out of them. It's I mean, we can all have an off night. We can all have a day where we just, look at the GM and think, leave me alone, go away, because I really just want to sit here and listen to the story and just, leave me alone. It's human. It's human to do that. But if it's that way every single time, what story is the GM going to weave for you? What is your part in the story? Are you going to be unnamed guard number 1 standing over there looking big and strong and menacing, or are you going to be a main character? The GM cannot do that for you if you don't engage with him and with the other players. When was the last time you saw a movie in which the main character did fuck all but stand there and be big and strong and menacing? It's not how it works. Think of role-playing as a movie. That's what I do anyway. I envision all the scenes that play out. I see them for my mind's eye when I play them. I think of, I'm sitting here in in the cinema and I'm watching this up on the big silver screen. And at the same time, I'm one of the actors who is plastered up on the big silver screen, so it's kind of a duality right there. When you have a group, as I did in the campaign we ran here, which is still one we get comments on, A Song of Tara. Early on in the campaign, there were days where I felt like, I gotta drag it out of people, and this is, have I made a mistake in setting up this campaign? And but I stuck with it, and towards the end of it, we created pure role-playing magic. Everybody had, characters who participated actively. There were days where I felt like, okay, all I have to throw them is a tidbit now and then, and they're gonna, they're gonna run this game pretty much on their own. And that works for me. That works for the players. Everybody has more fun that way, in my experience. So, also as a storyteller, this is obviously important. When you start a game, the first several the first several sessions of a new game. Characters are new. Your NPCs are new to you, obviously, but seeing as you've had time to prepare the campaign, you usually know your NPCs a little bit better than the characters will sit there with new characters who may have some relations to one another or may not, but they don't have a relation to the NPCs in the campaign just yet. They may be written as if they have a relation to them, but they don't know these NPCs beforehand because they haven't had the opportunity to roleplay with those NPCs, and consequently, it's harder in the beginning to be this extroverted person and proactive because of lack of knowledge of the characters. So early on in a campaign, any storyteller needs to be prepared to spend more time than later on, being the one who sets every scene pretty much. But it is fair for a GM to expect, quite frankly. I'm not necessarily a great big fan of that word in relation to role-playing, but I'll make an exception in this case. It is fair for a storyteller to actually expect players to increase their active participation in the game as it goes on. And that isn't something that happens overnight, and it will take some players longer than others. But if you've played, let's say, 5 sessions, just any number, you know your players, I don't, but let's just take that as an arbitrary example. You've played 5 sessions on a new campaign, and you still have, you have 5 players, and 3 of them never said a word unless you directly asked them. Let's just take that as a concrete example. You might want to sit down and actually have a word with each of these players between sessions and say, hi, I noticed that you are not saying much. Do you feel like you are you getting bored, or can I do something to help get you more into the story? We had a situation recently on The Long Voyage where one of the characters, in this case Gylfi, who started the campaign being quite quite active and involved, and early on he took a lot of, I won't necessarily use the word initiative, but he was constantly there. He was a presence. His behavior was known. The others had an idea of who this traveling companion was, and so on and so forth. And then the last several sessions, Gylfi has been a background character. He's been, he's been one with the wallpaper, so to say. And I was worried that maybe Brain had, phased out and lost interest in the campaign, and maybe I had done something to make him lose interest. Maybe it was just something I did. So I sent him a message one day on Skype and said, look, should we maybe talk about this, because I worry that you're not having fun. And he assured me that he was fine. He just had he just needed a breather for a little while, but he was still thoroughly enjoying himself and listening in to the others, and that way he was keeping up to date to the campaign. And then when I know that, I can try to involve him. I know the level that he's capable of being involved in the campaign. I can, once in a while throughout a campaign, I can just turn the attention, or once in a while over a session, I can turn the attention over to him and say, okay, how does Gylfi react to this? What's his take on this? What does he do right now? And I can gauge from Brain's responses whether he's really in a position where he can do much and take part in any way, and then it works out that way quite well, I think, anyway. And he is Brain is Brain is a good role player. I mean, you've seen him play Finn over on the Masks game, and his reaction or his interaction with, for example, just to take one example, over on that group, when he and my character of Diamond were, really at odds, and it was tearing the group to pieces because, quite frankly, they couldn't stand each other's guts. They couldn't be in the same room. And he was the one who dealt with that. He was the one who confronted her and then basically apologized. Laid himself bare and said, "I've been an ass. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I've misjudged you. I've been, expecting certain things out of you that, they aren't fair to expect, and because you were a latecomer, I thought, why are you butting into something that already works?" And just that gives you a kind of idea of how he handled it, and it was brilliant. The role-playing that got out of that had me in tears, and the same for several of the other players. That was so powerful. And that goes to show that the Brain is an excellent role player. And he just has a need right now to be reactive for a while. That's perfectly okay. I know that eventually he's going to turn around and he's going to be, extrovert again. But that still leaves me in a position for a while where I have to, as a storyteller, I have to modify the story in a way where there is an introverted character in the group. It's less of a problem in the Long Voyage because the remaining 3 players are all, they are all sort of, go-getters and active people in their own way. Sindri might be sort of a middle ground there, in that he could be the gruff stoic type standing in the corner and grumping at everyone, but he will still go out and actively find solutions to problems, and that is, in my opinion, is a good middle ground. You don't have to always be on, but if you're never on, you're not a part of the story. You're not helping driving it forward, and you are left out of the much wanted collaborative effort. My advice in closing this one off is, if you are the storyteller, when you say, "I am going to create a game," it will be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles campaign in the old Palladium system. Yay, I haven't played that for 20 years. Let's try that. And all the others go, yeah, why not play mutated animals? Let's give it a shot. And then they sit down to create their characters, and then, engage with them there. Listen to what types they want to play. And at the first hint of, yeah, I kind of think, he's going to be the kind who just, he's going to be the strong, silent type, or I want him to be really creepy, and, people should be, kind of frightened of him, and not, he's not going to say much, but he's just going to be this menacing presence, or something along those lines. Stop them right there. And explain to them why that isn't going to work. Explain to them that that kind of character will feel left out, because very few people will engage with them, very few people will do anything with them, and consequently they're going to be bored to tears within a few sessions. They don't all have to be, yay, happy, extrovert, everybody, I love everybody. Don't have to be that way. There are many ways of being an extrovert. But because this is a game situation about adventure and experiencing strange and weird things that we would never experience in real life, at least for the most part, just warn them when they get that idea. Don't encourage it. Don't tell them, oh, that sounds so cool, because believe me, you're not going to be able to continue to engage with them in new and interesting ways. Eventually, you're just going to end up doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's going to be like an old vinyl record stuck in the same groove, and you will be just as bored with it as the player will. That's the kind of character that can eventually either drop out of a campaign, or if there are too many of them in a campaign, can make the campaign stop, because there's nothing happening. If you are a player, conversely, when you sit there and you think about your player or your character concept, do yourself a favor and remind yourself when this image of this, hero that just walks down the street and everybody falls over their own feet in abject awe at how cool and awesome you are. Just ask yourself, how am I ever going to get to that point if nobody ever talks to me? If nobody really interacts with me, how am I ever going to get from struggling newbie to the I saved the world for the 15th time, worship me, everyone? It's just not happening. I can make a brief comparison here to a movie. I recently sat down and watched The Hunger Games for the first time. I'd never had a chance or even the inclination to watch those movies before, but I found them on one of these sites. It was on Viaplay, I believe, on the interwebs. They had the first one up, and I thought, okay, let's see what all the hype is about. And I very quickly started seeing that as a sort of a mini role-playing game, where the adventure was survive the Hunger Games. And the main characters are Katniss Everdeen and Peter Millark. And, well, they're the only two players, really. They're only the two player characters in that campaign. And it very quickly became clear that Katniss is the extrovert. She's the go-getter, the active, the proactive character in the game, and Peter is the reactive and introverted character. And now ask yourself, why do you think Katniss Everdeen is the Mockingjay? Why do you think she's the person on the cover of all the movies? She's the one that you can relate to most easily. Another example from the movie world, in which it shows that you can have introverted characters that still, are out there. You can have something resembling the big, strong, silent type, but who is still, in their own way, not actually introverted, but extroverted. Think about Guardians of the Galaxy. You have Star-Lord. Star-Lord is just about as exceptionally extrovert as you can get. Look at me, flash and dandy, everything is about me. Oh God, haven't you heard about the mighty Star-Lord? He wants everybody to know about him being the big damn hero. And then you have Drax the Destroyer, who is who has been described as being a character with a fairly severe case of autism. Somebody says it's going to don't worry, it goes over your head, Drax. And it's like, nothing goes over my head, I'd catch it. Because he's literal. He takes everything literal, but because he has that trait, he becomes someone that the others will actively engage just to see how he reacts. And he engages others because he will be the one who really wants to help his comrades when they are in distress, emotional distress. He will walk up to them and try to offer them some kind of advice, and it will come out horribly because, again, he takes everything literal. But that means that while he is the big, strong, silent type, he is still the one who initiates things. He takes the initiative. Not necessarily all the time, but he does so with enough frequency that you get a very, very clear sense of Drax the Destroyer being this hilarious kind of character. the closest thing you get to a completely reactive character in that story is Groot. Everybody loves Groot, but nobody really knows anything about Groot because I am Groot. It's the only thing you get out of him. He might as well be monosyllabic. And Groot isn't really the one who goes out there and starts things. He waits for Raccoon to give him an order or suggestion sort of thing, and he will react to that, making, at least in my opinion, Groot a fun but fundamentally uninteresting character. He's just, he's there, and he's the powerhouse, the big strong creature that can beat everything up. So those are the three archetypes really in that group as far as I'm concerned. And I think that kind of, that does illustrate the different types. In many ways, I think role-playing groups would do well to sit down and watch Guardians of the Galaxy first to get an idea of, especially new ones, to get an idea of how different characters really work, and it requires them to think a little bit about the psychology of the movie. So yeah, in closing, I tend to say in closing and then talk for another 10 minutes. But this really will be the end of this, the close of this. Think about this. Don't make reactive, introverted characters, because you will not further the campaign. Don't let your characters, the player characters in your campaign, do that, because they will not further your campaign. You will not be able to get them to push the story forward. Not unless you drag it out of them, and that simply isn't fun. It's too much work. It's not funny. It ends up being the GM who alone creates things, maybe with the collaboration of one or two other players, and it becomes tedious and repetitive, and you only get very few perspectives on any given situation. And who wants to do that for 2 years on end for a long campaign? So yeah, that's my personal take on this issue. Again, agree, disagree, leave a comment below, tell me I'm an idiot, tell me that you agree, whatever the hell you want to do. But again, as I always say in these videos, like, share, subscribe. If you have role-playing friends who you think might benefit from listening to CharismaToAC, maybe you have a group of players who are struggling a bit, tell them to come over and listen to some of our games. Drop in, listen to my Storyteller talks, or Heine's similar GM talk with Heine, or that sort of thing. Listen into these things. We hope that we can help give some inspiration once in a blue moon. And yeah, again, as I said, like, share, subscribe. We need more subscribers. We want to drive up the membership of this page, so that when people search for role playing on YouTube, they will get hits on our videos more easily. And yeah, that's the way it goes. So from me for now, I will say thank you for listening, and please be back for the next one. I've got at least one more of these planned. Whether I'll ever get around to doing it, we'll see, but I have one planned. And yeah, on that note, from me here, bye.